Welcome to HQL and SQL in Hibernate. After watching this video, you will be able to identify key differences between Hibernate query language, or HQL, and structured query language, or SQL. Run native SQL queries within Hibernate. Run HQL queries using Java Entity Objects. Integrate HQL queries into a Spring Boot application, and handle common errors in HQL queries. We learned about Hibernate ORM and entity relationships in previous lessons. Now we need a way to query data efficiently. Hibernate provides two main approaches for querying data: structured query language, or SQL, and Hibernate query language, or HQL. SQL allows direct interaction with the database using standard SQL queries. HQL is an object-oriented query language that interacts with Java Entity Objects instead of raw database tables. SQL allows database-specific operations, while HQL abstracts database details, making applications more portable and easier to maintain. Developers may need to run native SQL queries in some cases to improve performance or perform complex database operations that are not easily expressed in HQL. In this example, code snippet, the @persistence context annotation injects an instance of the entity manager. Hibernate allows native SQL queries to run inside a Spring Boot application using the entity manager. The create native query method is used to run a raw SQL statement directly in Hibernate. The set parameter method prevents SQL injection by setting a parameterized value instead of directly embedding variables into the query. And the getResultList method retrieves the results from the query processing as a list of objects. So, when would you use native SQL? Native SQL is useful when migrating legacy SQL-based applications to Hibernate while maintaining existing SQL queries. Developers may prefer native SQL when performing database-specific optimizations that require fine-tuned indexing strategies. In some cases, applications need to work with database views, stored procedures, or complex joins that are not easily handled using HQL. HQL allows querying data using Java entity names and object properties, unlike SQL, which works directly with database tables and columns. This approach provides database independence, making applications easier to maintain across different database platforms. Here is a basic query example using HQL. In this code, the from book clause instructs Hibernate to retrieve data from the book entity instead of directly querying the database table. The b.price condition filters books where the price is greater than the specified value. The set parameter method prevents SQL injection by ensuring safe input handling. And the getResultList method retrieves the results as a list of Java objects rather than raw database records. HQL queries can be run inside Spring Boot services and repositories. In this code example, the @repository annotation marks this as a Spring Data repository, allowing automatic running of queries. The @query from book B, where b.price annotation defines an HQL query to fetch expensive books. And the @paremPrice annotation maps the method argument to the query parameter dynamically. Here are some common errors when working with HQL. In HQL, queries must reference entity class names rather than actual database table names. If you mistakenly use a table name, Hibernate will throw a query syntax exception because it expects a mapped entity name. Always ensure that your HQL queries refer to the correct Java entity classes rather than raw database table names. Hibernate uses lazy loading to defer the loading of related entities until they are explicitly accessed. If you try to access a lazy loaded entity outside an active transaction, Hibernate will throw a lazy initialization exception because the required session has already been closed. To prevent this, always access lazy loaded fields within an open transaction or use join fetch in your queries to load related data eagerly. While HQL resembles SQL, it has distinct rules and does not support certain SQL-specific syntax, such as select asterisk. Using incorrect syntax, such as missing entity aliases or improperly structured queries, will result in a query syntax exception. Always follow HQL conventions, such as selecting entities instead of raw columns and using valid property names instead of database column names. In this video, you learned that HQL is an object-oriented query language used with Hibernate, whereas SQL interacts directly with database tables. HQL is preferred for database independence, while native SQL is useful for performance tuning and raw queries. Spring Boot repositories simplify the running of queries, making HQL integration seamless, and you should always use parameterized queries to prevent security vulnerabilities such as SQL injection.